This is the Voyage Report podcast, where you get the scoop on travel. Now, the editor-in-chief of the Voyage Report, Mark Albert.
Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome. Today, we're going to share some of our favorite experiences on the Great American Total Solar Eclipse. Millions of you saw it, safely, we hope, when it passed through the continental United States on August 21st, 2017. One of our very first podcasts, posted back in February, became one of our most popular, previewing the eclipse that was 6 months away. Our guests for that podcast kept to their plan to chase the eclipse just like they've been star chasing for 35 years. Wow. Patti Isaacs and Gauss Rescigno of Stillwater, Minnesota join us once again via Skype. Patti, Gauss, welcome to the Voyage Report podcast.
Hi, nice to be there.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. Patti has written a guest column for VoyageReport.com. It was our featured column this past Sunday. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, Patti, Gauss, how was the Great American Total Solar Eclipse?
It was more crowded than the other ones that we've been to.
By a few million, right?
Yeah.
Equally awesome. We loved it.
Yeah, I've decided that eclipses are sort of the crack cocaine of the natural world. And once you get that experience and that feeling, you just think about the next time you're going to get it.
Well, you got your fix 3 decades ago, more than 3 decades ago, almost 40 years ago.
Yep.
And it stuck with you.
Yeah, well, I guess the first time that we went, there wasn't the social media or the awareness that there is now.
Right.
And we just went thinking, well, we've never seen one of these. Let's go. It'll be cool. And we didn't have any real anticipation. And so for that first one, it was really stunning. All the adjunct effects of the eclipse when we viewed them, the darkness all around, that 360-degree sunset, how the weather cooled, the birds quieted down. Nobody had prepared us for that. We didn't know about that stuff, so it was all really new and kind of knocked us over.
And there weren't very many people to see it with us. There was one other group close by, and then we noticed a few cars along the road that had signs on their windows saying eclipse or bust or so forth, but not that many people out there watching it. And certainly nothing like this year.
So how did the 2017 eclipse rank in your experiences?
It was just about the best one.
Wow.
I think it was the best one because it
wasn't
the longest. The longest one was the 91 eclipse, which we saw from a boat in the Pacific Ocean just off the coast of Mexico. That one lasted about 7 minutes. That was a really long period of totality. This one was only about 2 or 2.5 minutes. But just the way we were kind of on high ground in the prairie, and we were in kind of a mound, we could see a long way off, and we could see the shadow approaching. That was really amazing.
That was something new for us. We had heard before, somehow or another, before our very first eclipse, that if you look in the direction that the eclipse will be coming from, you may be able to see the shadow of the moon coming across the landscape toward you. Well, the 3 eclipses that we've seen before were all from really flat, low locations. One was the prairie outside of Winnipeg, which is just pancake flat. The Mexico one, we were out in the ocean in a boat. And the Aruba one, we were right on the beach at the ocean. And Aruba's very flat. So we had no high vantage point. But this time we did. We were in Scottsbluff, a little north of Scottsbluff, Nebraska, in sort of the Sandhills region. So there are big, tall hills and deep, valleys. And we found a spot on the side of a hill with a nice northwest vantage point, and we actually were able to see that dark shadow approaching. And it comes very quickly.
I mean, the moon's shadow is traveling something like 1,500 miles an hour, so it comes pretty fast. But we could see the darkness on the horizon, and then within seconds, we were in totality.
Amazing. Wow, to see all that coming towards you and sort of the heightened anticipation.
Right.
Yeah. What was your experience trying to get there? You had planned out a route for several months. You were going to drive down from Minnesota, I think, to Nebraska, right? But how did it all turn out?
Well, we had plans. We had a hotel reservation in Lincoln because it was supposed to be totaled just south of there, and in the town of Beatrice, a little south of Lincoln, and actually Bill Nye the Science Guy was broadcasting from there. So we were thinking somewhere around Lincoln, and we thought, well, if it's cloudy, we'll drive a little, a couple hours one way or another to get clear skies. But when we all converged, and this time we went, we met up with our two adult sons. Our oldest son has a wife and two kids. The other son is married, and his wife came along, and then another couple who were friends of theirs. So we had 4 parties that converged in Lincoln, all in our own cars. And we met that night, Sunday night before the eclipse. We'd been listening to weather broadcasts and, checking online kind of obsessively. And the forecast did not look good for Lincoln. So we decided that we would rise at 5 in the morning and start driving west until we got clear skies.
And we ended up way over on the other end of the state. Scotts Bluff is almost in Wyoming, so we drove a long way.
You called an audible.
Miles. What?
400 miles. Wow. You called an audible and then drove 8 hours, or what was it, 6 hours?
Well, we drove kind of fast, so it wasn't quite 8 hours. Our son and his wife were in the lead car. They'd gotten about a half-hour jump on us, and they had all the weather information and better cell phone connection. And they were like, nope, it's bulletproof in Scotts Bluff. That's where we're going. And we said, well, we're behind you. We may not catch up. And he said, drive faster.
Wow. Yeah, well, the eclipse waits for no one.
No,
that's right.
Yeah, so sorry to the Nebraska Highway Patrol. I think we did exceed the speed limit a bit, but we were careful.
Well, we'll give you some plausible deniability. There's a picture on Patti's Facebook page with a bunch of people waiting, I imagine right after you pulled in at 100 miles per hour, and it says, waiting for first contact.
Yeah. That's, and those people, that was our son and his wife and kids. But yeah, we first set up, what we did, we got to Scotts Bluff, which is right on the edge of the path of totality, and we wanted to be closer to the center of that path so we could see the eclipse for the longest possible duration. The eclipse lasted about an hour and about a minute 40 seconds in Scotts Bluff, but it was
It was about 2.5 minutes, I
almost
think.
Almost 2.5 where we
something
were.
Like that. Oh, we should maybe say what first contact means. That first contact is when the moon, the edge of the moon first touches the sun. And that's when you start seeing a little bite taken out of the sun.
If you look at it carefully through your eclipse
with
glasses.
your filter, of course, with your solar filter.
Yes, we're all about safety here at the Voyage Report.
Yeah, right.
Wasn't there a movie called First Contact, too, I think? I don't know. The aliens are coming or something? Yeah.
Jodie Foster or something?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of a science fiction one.
Yeah, maybe.
But I don't think it had – I think it had to do with species contacting each other, not the moon contacting the sun.
Yeah, and then, of course, second contact is totality, and third contact is the end of totality, and fourth contact is when it all ends, when the partial phase is done.
Right. Let's talk about the crowds. Tell us what you saw. Oregon called out the National Guard. There were so many tourists. There were reports of astronomical car rental and hotel prices, pardon the pun there. So many people wanted to be along the line of totality. What did you see as far as crowds? One picture that you took had highway patrol signs saying, emergency parking only, don't pull off here, go there for the eclipse, turn your headlights on, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I think they were afraid that somebody maybe who didn't know the eclipse was happening was suddenly, but why is it so dark all of a sudden? And they get distracted and an accident or something.
But as far as the crowds, we didn't really, because we left at 5 in the morning, we did not encounter any problems. Certainly as we drove from Minnesota down to Lincoln, Nebraska on a Sunday afternoon, traffic was heavier than you would expect. But it moved along. We didn't have any problems. And then leaving at 5 a.m. to drive west, again, there was more traffic than you might expect at 5 a.m. on a Monday morning. But but we had no problems. However, we have friends who were in Lincoln and then left at about 8 or 9 in the morning, and they were in bumper-to-bumper traffic on the freeway trying to get to clear weather. So I guess planning early paid off.
Yeah, and then in Scottsbluff, where we saw the eclipse, there was a lot of traffic and a lot of eclipse viewers, but nothing terrible. I mean, we were able to get around just fine.
Yeah, we were able to drive at normal speeds pretty much. And then when it was interesting, after the eclipse was over and then we left, because we were so far out into northwestern Nebraska, we decided to come back through South Dakota. And so Gauss and I left where our viewing spot and drove north and east on 2-lane roads through these sand hills, and just every hilltop that we came to, there were still people gathered, setting up, breaking up their, breaking down their viewing stations. People had umbrellas and lawn chairs and whatnot, and that went on for many miles as we drove back. And also our two sons and their families had to get back the next day. So even though the eclipse ended at, we were done about 1
o'clock
in the afternoon, and they had driven 400 miles that morning, they both drove all the way back to the Twin Cities that day.
Wow.
And our younger son reported getting stuck in a traffic jam on the freeway on Interstate 35 between the Iowa border and the Twin Cities, stop and go traffic at 2 a.m.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was all people coming back from the eclipse.
Yes, at 2 a.m. in the morning, there are normally not traffic jams at the Iowa-Minnesota border. I can attest to that. Right? Listeners, Patti has written a guest column at voyagereport.com about her experience, not only seeing the Great American Total Solar Eclipse with her family, but also her lifetime of chasing the stars with Gauss. And you can find it by searching the word eclipse, or simply go to our Reporter's Notebook section under the News tab. Now, to the both of you, does it ever get old, or are you really still filled with all this wonder?
No, absolutely.
Never gets old. No, I would love to see another one tomorrow if I could.
No, never gets old. It's different each time you see it. The circumstance, the physical setting may be different. The people you see it with, we've seen it at different points in our life. The first one, we weren't even married yet, and we were in our 20s. And we drove a Volkswagen Bug, to the old kind, to Winnipeg in February, so you can imagine how cold and rattly that was. And we only had an AM radio for entertainment. Then we saw the one in Mexico with our children when they were really small. Our older son, Luca, was 8 then, or 7, and our younger son was 3, and unfortunately kind of slept through that one. We went to Aruba in 98, and then the kids were well aware of what was going on, and they got into it and were more real active participants. And this time now we had not only our grown children, but 2 grandchildren with us.
And our daughters-in-law.
And our daughters-in-law who had never seen eclipses. So this experience was sort of our son Emilio told his wife that this was kind of a hazing ritual to be part of the Rescigno household.
Well, yeah, I think, your grandkids were, 3 and 5 years old, I think?
Right.
And so did you feel as though you were sort of passing along your love of the heavens to them?
Definitely.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, we have to, their dad, Luca, our older son, is a amateur astronomer himself, and he bought a telescope when he was still in high school, and he has one and takes his kids out to show them stars and planets and globular clusters. So it is sort of, the astronomy dweeb gene has pretty much infected the family. And yes, we're passing along a tradition and a love to them. They seem to like it.
Well, and you devised some creative activities to try and share the eclipse with them. I'm looking at a photo right now of 2017 spelled out in little snapshots through pinholes that capture the eclipse. Talk about how you devised these activities and how you got the idea.
I swiped that one from the internet. Oh no, it was the Oreo cookie that I swiped from the internet. The idea of projecting the date through pinholes we got from a little star watching party that we went to with a local meteorologist named Mike Lynch. He does these star parties around town, and about a week before the eclipse, he did one not far from us, our neighborhood. So we went, and he showed how he had spelled out his name in pinholes on a piece of cardboard and then projected it on the sidewalk. So I thought, aha, we'll do that. That will be our record of 2017. Mm-hmm. So we got that one from him. And then we demonstrated, I think this one I did get from the internet, take an Oreo cookie apart. We turned the white side out and said, this is the sun. I held that in my right hand. Then I took the other side and made sure that the dark side was out and held that in my left hand, and I told the kids, this is the moon. And then I slowly moved the left side toward the right side until the little part of the dark wafer began to cover up the white cream. And then when they were all put together, I said, that's what the eclipse will look like. And then I gave them cookies, and they ate them.
Well, I was going to say, of the two activities, I definitely prefer the Oreo one. I can't eat the poster with the pinholes in it, but I can definitely eat the Oreo cookies.
Yeah, right. Right.
Patti, I want to read a passage from your column that you wrote for us. You write, quote, "How lucky am I to have had these cosmic events as mile markers in my life with Gauss and with my kids and grandkids. Eclipses represent curiosity and adventure, and in them we experience the beauty and magnificence of nature. Like life itself, eclipses take us to places we might not otherwise visit, in seasons we may not have chosen, and reward us for being there." So can you explain a little bit more about the reward of being there?
It's just a sense of wonder. It's so unusual to see the sun like that, or it's not really the sun. You see this black hole and with the corona around it. It's just amazing.
Yeah, well, I guess I wrote that thinking of eclipses, but also travel in general. That to go places and to experience new worlds. Whenever you travel, whenever you see someplace that's not your home turf, it expands your life a little bit. It expands your outlook, and eclipses maybe sort of an almost. I heard somebody say it almost a psychedelic way. It's so far outside our normal realm of experience that it's that's the reward. It's like it stretches you way beyond where you would have been if you had stayed home on the sofa.
Well, also, Aruba is a place that we might not have thought to go to.
Right. Yes.
If it hadn't been for the eclipse in '98.
Yeah, we certainly, eclipses are sort of a good random destination generator, in that you don't get to pick where it's going to be. You go on its terms. You go there. And so I was thinking of who would drive to Winnipeg in February? It's cold there. It's nasty. It's cold and windy, and you're out on the prairie, and it's really flat, and it's not particularly scenic. But going out there to see this eclipse, you see a landscape you would otherwise not maybe bother to visit. And there is a beauty there that you maybe don't think of. Certainly this eclipse, going to Scottsbluff and driving through the Sandhills region of northwestern Nebraska, that's a place people just think of as empty nothing.
Well, people always say, oh, Nebraska is such a boring state, but it really isn't. The part that's boring is where I-80 goes through. But if you go north, or northwest, especially where the sandhill regions is, it's beautiful.
Right. And so, we might not, well, I might have gone to the Sandhills anyway because I was a geography student and that was a region of the United States that we talked about. But but normally I think a lot of people would not venture to northwestern Nebraska, and actually following the eclipse in my Facebook feed from various friends who were out there, there were several comments from people saying, wow, I just had no idea this beauty was out here, this amazing landscape.
Aruba was a little different because Aruba, we felt that if it had been cloudy, well, what's wrong with a vacation in Aruba in February?
Yes,
right.
That was
didn't go wrong.
Yeah, right.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, I think travel is a wonderful eye-opener and gives you a whole new perspective on the world. And certainly with an eclipse, you're right. You have to go where the eclipse is. Although this one was pretty diverse as far as geography. I think there were 14 states that were covered by the path of totality.
Yeah. Right. And we're already thinking about 2024 and where might the weather be clearest then?
Niagara Falls is going to be in the path of totality. Would that be cool to see an eclipse at Niagara Falls?
Yeah, that's right. Whereas this one in 2017 went from Oregon to South Carolina. I think that one goes from like New York to the Gulf of Mexico or something. It's a different swath.
Right. It comes up through Mexico and through Texas and up. Ends up in Newfoundland, I think. And
the two paths do cross at Carbondale, Illinois. That's probably been, people have made a lot of that. But I think many places you may only see a total eclipse once every 400 years or every 700 years. And Carbondale's getting 2 in 7.
Well, whoever they hired for the tourism director there, they sure did a good job in arranging some
That's right.
celestial events in tourism, right?
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. Reading your column, I really thought of your experience of watching this eclipse sort of as a coda to your lifetime of star chasing, and this one especially, as you describe, is deeply personal for your family. You write that you thought perhaps you would be sad or even nostalgic, but really felt, quote, joy and wonder instead.
Yeah. In the column, I write that back in February, Gauss was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which has generally a pretty grim outlook. Although he's been doing well, he's responded really well to chemo, and he may be one of those lucky people who lasts a long time with it or beats it. But being realistic, this may be the last one that we see together. And I did kind of worry as we prepared for this trip that at that moment of totality when we were together again, that I would be sad or nostalgic or really emotional, that it would be a sad experience for me. And it wasn't at all. Once I saw that shadow coming across the land towards us and we hit totality, I went up to Gauss, we hugged, we yelled, everybody was cheering. I said, we did it. And he said, yep, number 4. And then my perspective just kind of closed into what I was sensing at the moment, that 360-degree sunset that you see when you're under that round shadow of the moon, the cooling air. We didn't have the quietness from birds because we were out where there weren't any birds, but I was just wrapped up in the sensation of what an eclipse does. And I didn't have that sadness or nostalgia, and I may sometime later, but I also feel like that's where that "how lucky am I" paragraph came from. I just thought, well, if this is the type of milestones that Gauss and I have in our lives together, what a great way to look back on your life, going sort of from one adventure to another and anticipating where we'll go next and what we'll discover together next. So I'm not sad. Not right now, anyway.
It is a wonderful through line, Gauss, to have the eclipses sort of as milestones along your marriage and even before you were married.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I have to say, Gauss is the one who, he's the guilty party who wrote me into this.
It's all his fault.
It's his fault.
Well, I saw an eclipse in Italy when I was just 9 years old in 1961, and it was just partial, and we were very close to where it was total, but my dad didn't want to get in the car and go down and drive, like an hour to where it was total. So ever since then, I said, I want to see a total eclipse.
Yeah. So basically,
that's what got me started.
This is basically just revenge against his dad for not taking him to the first one.
Well, I mean, an hour is nothing.
It was really close. We were living in Milan, and I heard that it was total in Genoa. That's really close.
He's still making that point. Damn it.
Yeah, it's right.
Well, you did not make that mistake here for your kids and your grandkids, and obviously took them to see something that they'll remember forever. I think in our last podcast together, I had mentioned that I can remember I was a kid. I don't even remember. Maybe it was 8, 9, 10, and we were at my great-grandparents' ranch on the Silt Mesa in Colorado for Halleys Comet. And I can remember looking through the telescope, and there was all this buildup, and it's funny the way a child thinks, but at the time I looked through the telescope, and, my hands were shaking, and so my dad had said, don't touch the telescope, because the comet will look like it's bouncing around. And I still remember to this day looking through the viewfinder there, looking at through the telescope, the lens, and it was just this tiny speck. And I thought, where's the rest? But it was an amazing experience, and I remember it. It was, I think it was at night, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was 86, yeah.
Oh, was it 86?
I believe so.
Yeah, because we took Luca, and he was 2.
But it was this time around. Halleys Comet wasn't very spectacular, unfortunately.
But then we ended up. There were a couple of other comets
that
Hale-Bopp a few years later.
There was one other one too.
Kohoutek was kind of a bust.
Yeah, that wasn't very good. And then the Hale-Bopp was great. And then there was one other one with a Japanese name, which I can't remember.
Right. So, yeah, it's you kind of take your chances. Although with an eclipse, I guess as long as you get sunny skies, it is spectacular. That it will never be just until a number of billion years from now, when the orbits of the sun and the moon are a little different, and the moon will no longer cover the sun completely.
Yeah, the moon is supposedly getting farther away every year by an inch and a half a year or something.
Yeah. But yes, as long as, if you see an eclipse, it will blow you away.
Well, Gauss, you may see the next eclipse, but I don't think we're going to be here when the moon is finally so far out there that there are no more eclipses. So I don't think we have to, worry about that one.
Not our problem.
What was the reaction of the crowd around you? I mean, you said that you hugged Gauss and cheered and all that. What was the reaction of the other people around you that perhaps for them this had been their first ever
Everybody
eclipse?
cheered. Everybody cheered. It's this weird, spontaneous thing. And I talked to friends who viewed the eclipse in other locations from us, other towns. And they said when it hits totality, people just spontaneously start cheering.
And that's what happened.
I have to say that I was so kind of wrapped up. I wasn't being a very good journalist here. I was so wrapped up in my own experience that I didn't really even look at what the grandkids were doing, which is may call into question my suitability as a grandparent.
You are forgiven.
But so we talked later, about what it was like, and they liked it, but for them it was. I may be repeating myself here, but for them, everything in the world is new, and they haven't been, seeing the sun rise in the sky every day for 30 years or 60 years. So that if it blacks out one day, they think that's just crazy, because so many of their experiences are novel. They just kind of took this in like, oh yeah, cool.
Right.
But and then Soren went back to his peanut butter sandwich
and Oreo cookies.
And Oreo cookies. Yeah, he's 3. Give him a break. But
there are some amazing photos, listeners, that I'm sure that you've seen online. One of my favorites is by the photographer Ted Hester, Hesser, taken at Smith Rock State Park. It's this amazing photo of a hiker on a cliff face, and he is being silhouetted by the eclipse at totality. It is really absolutely stunning. We talk in our next podcast for next week with another National Geographic photographer who took some pictures of the eclipse, so you'll want to tune in for that as well. Your pictures, obviously you were wearing safety goggles. Did you take any pictures of the actual eclipse?
I didn't. Our sons took a couple, but we just through filters with like iPhones. Really, doing eclipse photography is a whole other discipline, and not one that I'm getting into. I'm there, and Gauss too, I would say.
I mean, really, to take good eclipse pictures, you need a tripod and a camera with a good camera with a telephoto lens. Otherwise, the sun is pretty small if you take a picture without a telephoto lens.
Yeah. And you can't simply put a pair of eclipse glasses over the lens of your camera. People who take these really stunning photographs have special equipment and special filters that they use to do it. Like I said, it's a whole separate discipline, and I'm awfully glad those people are out there, because there are just some amazing pictures that really give you a better feel for what the eclipse is like than any of the little snapshots that amateurs like me might take by sticking eclipse glasses over my iPhone and snapping.
Yeah, if you find an eclipse picture online that you like, it's almost worth $30 paying for a print, having it framed and put up on your wall, rather than spending all the time and energy and money trying to buy your own equipment.
Right.
Absolutely.
And in fact, that's what we did after
really?
After the Aruba eclipse. We were just experiencing it, and we were there on the beach with a bunch of other eclipse enthusiasts, including a very skilled amateur photographer. And he had pictures. We exchanged, I think at that point we did have email. We exchanged contact information, and then we did purchase pictures from him. And we have a little photo collage Gauss keeps on his office wall of that guy's pictures of the eclipse, and then some shots of our family, on that trip, and at the beach where we saw the eclipse.
So you mentioned you're planning to go to 2024. Have you already picked a state?
No, that will depend.
You have a few years, right?
Weather reports.
Yeah. I'm not trying to rush you. You have a little bit of time, maybe a few days.
So. But it is interesting that as soon as you see one, you start thinking about the next. If you've done it, you start thinking about when is my next fix coming?
Well, Patti has written a fantastic guest column for us at voyagereport.com. Listeners, you can find it under our Reporter's Notebook section under the News tab, or simply type in the word Eclipse in the search bar. You'll not only get her column, but you'll get a whole lot of our other coverage there as well. And feel free to leave your comments, your experiences, your photos, your thoughts on the Great American Total Solar Eclipse from 2017. We'd love to hear from you and hear what your experiences were as you saw it. Patti Gauss, you are so kind to join us for 2 podcasts and write a guest column for us. Living vicariously through you, thank you so much for not only just talking to us about this particular experience, but about the wonder of star chasing and all of your experiences doing it over the past 40 years. Very impressive and inspiring.
It's been a good way to live.
Absolutely. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Mark.
Listeners, what was your experience? We want to know. Share it with us at voyagereport.com and let us know by rating this podcast, giving us a review, and sharing it on social media. We have guests every week talking about travel news and trends, not just eclipses. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast. We'd sure appreciate your review. It helps bring more awareness to our journalism and original content. And if you have an idea for a future guest on our podcast, please reach out at voyagereport.com and let us know. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Mark Albert. Bon voyage.
You've been listening to the Voyage Report podcast. Get the scoop on travel at voyagereport.com.